Hey, this is American Lonsdale Fan, and I'm here to do a really quick review and explanation of a rifle that I really like, although I still haven't figured out what exactly it's for. And what I'm talking about is the Accelerator rifle as put out by XL Arms. You can't talk about this rifle without also talking about the pistol made by the same company, XL Arms, and it's called the Accelerator pistol. Both of these happen to be in .22 Magnum, and I've had both. I've had this one for a long time. This one I've only had for a little while, and I love them both. I just haven't quite figured out what they're for. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is I started out with this pistol, and I bought it for a really kind of bizarre reason. When I was growing up in the 80s and first started getting interested in firearms and so forth, I was always fascinated by the idea of a Magnum round being fired out of an automatic pistol. It just fascinated me. But of course, I was a lot younger. In the 80s, didn't have any money. Auto Magnums were very few and far in between, and also very expensive, so I never really had one. XL Arms, their corporate office is out of Chino, California, but most of their manufacturing is done in Arizona, and then in Chino is where they take the orders, but also store parts, probably do a lot of the finishing and assembly, which is kind of interesting, a gun company in California, but nonetheless, they're a very small company. They don't make a whole lot. Ironically, most of what they make is not even legal in the state that their corporate office is in, but that's another story. So anyway, when they came out a couple of decades ago, I looked at this thing as a chance to finally purchase a poor man's version of a gun I always wanted when I was a kid. So I was a big fan of these books right here. This is the Executioner series, aka Mac Bolan. It's been around since 1969, and it's still going on. And at the time that I was reading them in the 80s, the main character, the main protagonist, one of the guns that he always carried was the AMT 44 Automac. In fact, he even called it Big Thunder, and I always thought it was cool. I always thought it was be great to have one. Of course, AMT, if you know anything about it, they only made it a very limited market. The company went under, and so they're very rare nowadays. So when I saw this, kind of looked at it as a real poor man's version of it. So I said, what the heck? And they're not, either the pistol or rifle are very expensive, so I said, why not? So I went ahead and purchased this pistol. Had a few minor glitches with it, but some of that is not really the pistol's fault. It got a lot of bad press at first because they used to also make this in the 17 Hornady rimfire. And if you know anything about that round, that was a round that was never designed for any automatic platform. It was best served as a bolt action or single shot variant. So they did try chambering, the XL started chambering these in 17, and they weren't feeding, and there was nothing you could do with it. This one also had some problems, but it's not really the pistol's fault. And let's talk about that. So this, of course, is the .22 Winchester rimfire, a very underrated round, but a very misunderstood round. And let's be honest, when you're talking about something with this dimension, very long but very narrow, and you're asking it to reliably go up a feed ramp and feed reliably in an automatic pistol, that's asking a lot for both the gun and the caliber. Remember that these were never intended for that purpose. They were never really intended to be a pistol cartridge anyways. If you use loads that are less than 40 grain, and also get about less than 14 to 1450 muzzle velocity, then you are basically not creating enough pressure for the gun to properly cycle each time. So nowadays what they say is 40 grain or higher with your 22, and make sure that it has the proper muzzle velocity. If you use the right loads, it will feed every time. Once you know that, I found that this gun is actually pretty reliable. And talking about the rifle, it's got some very, very interesting dimensions. First of all, you look at it, and it's a very, very compact rifle. And it's almost because it almost has a half bullpup design. Yes, we know that the magazine isn't back here, but the magazine is not in front of the trigger guard. It's to the trigger guard, and in particular, both pistol and rifle, the chamber kind of sits a little behind the trigger as it is. So it brings everything a little closer. So real quick, this is an 18-inch barrel. This is about as short as you can get. Weighs in at about 8 pounds. And it's a very, very comfortable gun. I mean, it just fits well, you know, seems to point well, feels good, very ergonomic. The cheek rest works perfectly. Standard model just comes with the Picatinny top, and it's your choice. I like iron sights, so I didn't put any red dot or scope, but you can mount just about anything on this, just as you would your average AR-15. And it's just a very, very comfortable rifle to shoot. But let's take it apart and just kind of see the inner workings of it. Okay, so this is the Accelerator rifle. Complete one-piece polymer stock. It's kind of got a almost rubberized texture to it, which kind of makes it nice, but it's very, very solid. I have noticed all the pieces seem to be really in place. Not a lot of parts. You have basically the barrel, all of which are kind of hooked in by various screws and so forth, Allen wrench screws. Your safety is over here. It's real basic, just kind of blocks the hammer and the sear. This is the slide release. There's really been two downsides with this. One is the magazine catch. It's a heel release. Not bad, but does make changing mags a little slow. Let's kind of see what makes this tick, but instead of taking this apart, just for the sake of the camera, I'm going to take apart the pistol because Okay, so basically taking it apart is really simple, or field stripping it. I really wouldn't call it field stripping because you will need a couple of Allen wrenches. So you'll have one here and one here, one behind the front sight, one just behind the rear sight, and this whole piece comes off. This is where obviously the Picatinny rail is, and so forth. And what you get once you take it off is this very peculiar setup. First thing you'll notice is the spring. This is your recoil spring, and it's an elongation spring. It's not a compression spring, and it rides alongside the top of the barrel. This chamber just sits free floating, and that's why you can just pull the bolt off. I'm sorry, this is not the chamber. The chamber's over there, my mistake. Anyway, this whole bolt just peels off like so, and it's completely one piece. It makes it very easy to clean and maintain. If for some reason you want it, oh, I didn't even take the magazine out. I did check to make sure it was unloaded, but the barrel is fixed to the grip. If you wanted to, you could unscrew it right there. It's underneath the trigger guard, but I really don't see why you'd want to unless you wanted to change the barrel lengths. You can get different barrel lengths. And then of course here is the trigger assembly. That's held on by pins, but if you notice, oops, there we go. They're kind of staked in a little bit, not really staked in, but it gives you an idea that they don't really want you messing too much with the trigger assembly, but you could if you wanted to. and from what I've heard is this whole piece just pulls out. I have not played with the trigger assembly, but maybe one day I will. It kind of has a, for lack of a better term, a Ruger 1022 feel to it as far as the workings. Like I said, fixed barrel, recoil spring goes along the top, and the trigger assembly and everything is just here. Right here you can see what the safety does. It'll block both the hammer, the trigger, all in one simple thing. It's a little bulky, but it's not too bad. So just showing you in comparisons to the rifle, it's the same idea. You're going to pull the bolts off of here, and everything is going to pop off. And the difference is instead of a thin flat piece like this whole thing is just going to pop completely off. You'll see the bolt over here. The spring assembly will be an elongated spring up top. Everything will be pretty much the same, and it will be pretty much built the same. And the assembly, once again, you can see it's pinned right there to keep this trigger assembly in, but it's pretty much the same. Really easy maintenance, and like I said, kind of overbuilt, but it's a fun gun. Okay, so real quick, now that we kind of talked about this thing, what purpose does it serve? Is it a target gun? Yeah, it could definitely work very well as a target gun, but are there better ones? Yeah, I suppose. Is it just kind of a fun gun to take to the range? Certainly, absolutely. And you know, even though 22 Winchester rimfire Magnum is more expensive than 22 long rifle, it's still pretty cheap. So it's a fun gun to take to the range. I like the 22 mag. Certainly with this thing and the pistol is, you're not going to feel any recoil at all. But you're going to know it's firing. Of course, we all know 22 mag is very loud, and it does pack somewhat of a punch. So I almost say that this rifle is wanting so hard to almost be a tactical rifle, but it's coming up a little short, just in the sense of its overall design. 22 mag is not bad for defensive purposes, but we all know it's not our first choice. Another thing is with the 9 to 10 rounds. Oh yeah, real quick. These magazines are 9 rounds, although you can file this, shake this off a little bit, and you can actually squeeze 10 rounds reliably. But more importantly, they are heel release. So there is no tactical reload. There's no quick drop. It's basically ripping this thing out before you load it back in. So that's where it would lack as a tactical rifle. But you know what? Let's be honest. Would anybody who's breaking into your home really want to be looking down this barrel? Probably not. You know what? It's not a bad rifle for multiple purposes. And like I said, it just feels good in the hand. That's one thing I love about this. You grip it and it feels good. It's got just enough weight without being too much. The balance point for the rifle is, if I can show it, is kind of right where it should be. It's right in this spot, right in the trigger guard. So it just feels good bringing up, coming into focus each and every time. And I really like it. It's American made. It's made in a little small company. Like I said, the raw parts are made in Arizona, then shipped off to California, where they're assembled and finished. And you know what? I support companies like that. All right, that's all I got. God bless you and those you love.